Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the best and worst books of 2025. Well, my best and worst books of 2025. So, I've been away for a week and I got sick. I don't know if you can still hear it at this point. I'm not 100% better. Basically, it sucked, but I didn't want to go without a video this week, so we're filming, and I hope you enjoy this. I guess going over some stats really quick, I read 34 books in 2025, and my biggest genre of reading was fantasy, to nobody's surprise, and I had quite a few 5 stars. But today I wanted to talk about the books that I want to highlight as my best books of 2025, because I think I did actually have more 5-star books, or at least books between 4.5 and 5, but these are the select ones I really want to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so all of these books I gave 4.5 stars to. When the Reckoning Comes, this book is a contemporary horror novel. In this story, we follow a woman who's been invited to a former friend, distant friend's wedding on a plantation, and this plantation originally in their small town was very haunted, very creepy, and holds a lot of bad memories for our main character, but she still goes to just experience what this wedding is. And once we get there, a lot of stuff happens. And I really enjoyed how the story was told. We kept on getting flashbacks to her when she was a little girl, and then continuing on in present day with what's going on with the wedding and her arrival at the plantation. I really liked also at the end how the horror coalesced over the memories of present day people along with the horrors that happened in the past. So this book was very well done for me. Ring Shout is a great historical horror novella. The story focuses on people who are killing demons that are secretly in the KKK, and it's 1913 in southern Georgia, and it's a really good time. I hope this little novella becomes more short stories because it was so well done, and I really, really want more southern folklore to become part of this series and part of this world, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. Switching over to sci-fi now with Children of Time, I fully loved this book, and especially the dynamics between all of the characters and how they got along with each other. It was written so well. In this story, we're following a doctor whose experiment went wrong, but it also went right, just in a weird way. It's been a few thousand years since that experiment went awry, and another group of humans is trying to find a planet that they can live on because Earth is no more. It's uninhabitable, and they have like thousands of people that are in a deep sleep, hoping that the group that is supposed to find a new planet for them to live on will find that planet. And in this story, we learn whether or not humans and a new sentient species can actually work together, or if they will constantly always be a threat to one another. The Blighted Stars. This one focuses on a spaceship having a malfunction, and 50-plus-ish people survive and crash land into a planet that they were originally visiting to see if their mineral or biochemical experiment was going correct and not disturbing the planet's infrastructure. And when they land, they find that it's covered in something called shroud, which means it went wrong. The people that survive try to figure out what has happened, and also how the hell did they get off this planet that's uninhabitable. I was very surprised on how much I really enjoyed the story. It's very fast-paced and active. I really loved the character dynamics in this book, and I also really liked the politics that were coming out of it. So I really, really want to know more about the mystery that was semi-revealed by the end of this book. This is my only 4.75 star read of the year. This is Slewfoot. It is a folklore horror novel. The story centers on a young woman who just moved and got married to someone in colonial Connecticut. They are Protestants. They live in a small farming community, and she feels very ostracized and alone because she's a little bit more out there, while the rest of the community seems very controlled, very small, very Christian. What's more horrific than that? What I loved about this story was the revenge at the end. I loved all of the deep dives into the folklore of the area and what we learn about Slewfoot and his companions. I also just really loved that our main character got vindication by the end. These next ones are all 5-star reads, so you should all read them. No matter what they're about, you should read them. Necessary Fiction. This is a book that follows a queer found family in Lagos, Nigeria, and what happens to them in a year. I really want to do a reread of this book because I have so many thoughts and feelings that I just didn't write down the first time I read this, and I feel like I just want to write them all down and have a very deep discussion with myself with this book. This was such a fantastic read, and I hope more people will get their hands on it in 2026. Between Two Fires is a story about a young girl and a knight who are striving to find find a purpose, safety in France in the 1300s during the Black Plague. This story was such a time. It is horror, history, and fantasy all wrapped in one, but I really want to emphasize this is a horror story. So do look up trigger warnings before reading. The first chapter is rough. I just love the dynamic between our two main characters, and I feel like this is one of the best endings to a horror book that I've read so far, and it's very hard to find horror that wraps itself up very well. Forge of the High Mage. This is the fourth book in the Path to Ascendancy series written by Esselmont. I thoroughly enjoyed jumping back into this world and this prequel installment. I can't really talk about what happens in this book because it is the fourth book, but needless to say, I love that Esselmont is able to show us how the Empire started with some of the most notable characters from the main series and give some realism to these characters as well. Like, they're not all perfect and they mess up, but also the world is vast and things change. I feel like this book showcased exactly what needed to be shown at the start of the Empire being built, and it continued to give us lore drops that still were insanely cool to witness in this world. So Black Sun, I just finished in December, and I also just finished reading the second book in this trilogy because that's how much I was loving it. In this book, you're following 4 characters that have something to do with the Black Sun. It's an event that happens on the winter solstice, and a lot of chaos erupts from that event. I love the world that was built in here, and I really also love the dynamics these characters had. Each one kind of went through their own growth, and also some of them went through some decline, depending. What I will say for the second book, I also enjoyed it, but the second book is a lot more politics than this one. I will say I wish the second book was longer and had some more exploring of the world, but I didn't hate it. So I will be finishing this trilogy. The Will of the Many. I don't think this book really needs more introduction. I think BookTube is obsessively obsessed with this series, along with anywhere on the book community that reads fantasy, and it's for good reason. I really enjoyed this first book, and the second one was also really well done. I can't wait for more of the series to come out. This book follows one single character on his mission to take down this government. He originally thinks he'll have to do it by himself, but when he's in the orphanage, some mysterious senator comes and wants to procure him and give him a mission to infiltrate a very high society school and figure out what mysteries are lurking there. So what I love about this series is honestly just what is being told. I love what's being built in the world. I love what will is and how people consume or get hurt by it. I love the structure. I love what happens at the end of this book to lead into book 2, and I love what's happening in book 2 wise. All I can say is if you like adult high fantasy and you want an epic hero quest, I guess it's not really a quest, but a hero life, a story, I'd highly recommend reading the Hierarchy series. My arm is actually getting tired. This is insane. Sword of Kaigen. Yes, I finally read this story. It's been on my shelf for so long, and I was so intimidated by it. The reason is because everyone says you're going to cry, and you're absolutely going to cry. This story, without giving so much away, it's more about character growth than it is about plot. We meet a mother and son who live on a mountainside in a very secluded village, and their society deals with magics that are in water, such as ice. And we're following these two characters as they're experiencing their village being bombarded by military. And that's all I really can give, because the rest of it is all about the effects of that and also learning the history from the mother's perspective of this world. And it was so enjoyable. I loved all the characters, and chapter 27 will always live rent-free in my brain. Okay, how am I going to do this next one? Can y'all see them? I hope y'all can see this. This is the Dandelion Dynasty, and it's my ultimate top pick of the year. I read all 4 of the books this year back in February, March, and I cannot rave about this series enough. It became my number 2 series of all time, and I definitely will reread the series at some point, but it truly took me by surprise, and I fell in love with it and quickly read through all 4 books within, I think, a month, if I'm not mistaken. It's hard to hold these up and keep them straight at the same time, so the spines look beautiful. So what is this story about? Ultimately, it's about the Dandelion Dynasty being born in the first book, and then in the following 3 books, following that family and seeing what happens in politics and war, and what happens to a family when they get split apart due to a very significant event. Okay, I had to put the books down because they got too heavy. My favorite thing about the series is its exploration with politics, with the family dynamics, and with science, specifically electricity. It is talked about as a steampunk epic, and I think it's just referring to the fact that electricity is here, but it's not anywhere near what we know as electricity and its uses. And the other part that I do love is the dynamics that the gods have with the society in this world. So if you have been interested in this series, I would highly recommend picking it up. It's such a wonderful adult high fantasy epic. Okay, now to talk about the worst books of the year. And I have to say, I don't have many. I just have 3 to talk about, and I honestly don't want to talk about them for very long. This year, I had 2 books that were under 3 stars, and I had 1 book that I DNF'd. So let's talk about them. So Chasing Graves was a book I read in December, and unfortunately didn't work for me. I loved the plot idea, which was people were rich if they owned a ton of souls, and it explored how one city in particular was obsessively killing people, like visitors, so that there'd be more souls to own, and then people could get richer. It's basically slavery because it's forever indentured servitude. So with that, my problem was I hated all of the POVs, specifically 2, and then I was really indifferent to the other 2, which made me not compelled to want to read any of their chapters. And then the story felt like the sequencing of it was just terrible, and I kept on thinking like, I could rewrite this for you and make this a way more compelling story. And I don't like saying that because this is an indie author and he published it himself, and he published all 3 at the same time because this is a trilogy. I just wish somebody in his circle of friends, because there's an afterword, by the way, which he thanks all the people that helped him. I wish someone had told him this needs to be resequenced and you need to choose different characters. The next story that I had under 3 stars was Listen to Your Sister. This was a contemporary horror novel. I felt like it was way too rushed the first half of the book, and everything was focusing more so on the second half, which is when they're in the cabin. And I wish there was just more character buildup for the first half rather than just running into the cabin and having all of the horror start. Or I wish the horror wasn't so abrupt at a certain point and it had smoothly gone into it. It just seemed very rushed to me. If a story of 3 siblings trying to survive life in Seattle with one of them being hounded by cops and then they travel to a cabin in the woods to then figure out their family issues, if that sounds like something up your alley, then I think you'd really enjoy this story. And then finally, my DNF of the year is The Wolf of Arin Yarrow. This one, I tried with the audiobook, and then I felt like something seems off. So instead of doing the audio, I then read a chapter physically, and then I was like, oh no, this is just terrible. I think The Wolf of Arin Yarrow is for people who like to read YA, and the reason I say that is because the main character literally says, I'm not like other girls. And she's the only POV you get for the entire trilogy, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing this. Absolutely not. And that is it for my best and worst of 2025 books. And I wanted to mention before signing off that I'm not going to do a TBR for January, like a official video, but I did want to mention that I'm now part of a sci-fi book club over on Fable with my friend Mara and a few other book talkers. If you would like to join us, I will link it below. Basically, we're reading a sci-fi novel a month, and we hope that you will join us. This month it is going to be The Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe. This is a much older sci-fi book and apparently very gruesome, and reading the summary, it's not for the faint of heart. So do look up the trigger warnings if you are going to be joining us, but I am excited to do that with everybody. And with that, let me know what your best and worst books were for 2025. I would love to hear, and especially your best, because I would love to add more books to my TBR. And I hope your new year started off better than mine, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!